She said it right into the microphone. Cool, casual, like it cost her nothing. 'Cause to her it didn't. And this over here is my stepsister Brooke. She's just a firefighter. Just that one little word. 4 letters. She dropped it in there the way you'd say just a cold or just a scratch. Like everything I'd spent 11 years building, every burning building, every pulled body, every 3 a.m. alarm, could be summed up and thrown away with a single syllable. There were about 160 people in that ballroom at the Riverstone Event Center in Nashville. Crystal glasses catching the light. A live band playing something classy in the corner. My stepmother Beverly stood near the front table with her hand pressed to her collarbone, smiling like she'd just won something. My dad Frank laughed first. Not a nervous laugh. Not an awkward I don't know what to do laugh. A real one. Deep. Genuine. Kind that tells every single person in the room exactly where he stands. I was sitting at my assigned table in the back in a dress I found at a consignment shop for $65. And I did the thing I've been doing my whole life. I folded it up, put it somewhere deep inside my chest, and I swallowed it. But here's what my stepsister Tiffany didn't know. What nobody in that room knew. The man sitting at the head table, the one who was paying for this entire wedding, funding every flower and every glass of champagne, the father of the groom, I had carried him out of a collapsed building in East Nashville 2 years ago with my own 2 hands. And he was about 45 minutes away from remembering exactly where he'd seen my face before. Before I keep going, if this story is already hitting something in your chest, do me a favor. Hit subscribe right now. I put everything into these stories and I only want you here if it actually means something to you. And drop your city and your local time in the comments. I want to know where in the world you're listening from. Okay. Let's go. My name is Brooke Merritt. I'm 32 years old. I've been a firefighter and rescue technician with Nashville Fire Station 7 for 11 years. And what you're about to hear is the story of how the worst night of my adult life turned into the one I'll carry with me forever. Let me take you back 3 weeks. The afternoon Tiffany's wedding invitation showed up in my mailbox. Came on a Wednesday. I was just getting home from a 48-hour shift, still had the smell of smoke somewhere in my hair even after 2 showers at the station. The envelope was fancy, heavy cream paper, gold foil lettering, the kind of stationery that makes you feel underdressed just holding it. T&C Tiffany & Cole. I turned it over in my hands. My knuckles were still a little roughed up from a building collapse call we'd worked 2 days before. And right there on the inner envelope my name. Spelled wrong. Brooke with an extra E at the end. Brookie. Sounds small. And it is small. But when your family has had your name for 32 years and still can't get it right, it stops being a mistake and starts being a message. No +1. Of course. I set the invitation on my kitchen counter next to my gear manual and just looked at it for a while. The way you look at a bill you know you can't afford to ignore but can't bring yourself to open all the way. Then my phone rang. Dad. Which almost never happened unless Tiffany needed something from me. Tiffany wants you there, he said. His voice had that practiced, warm quality he only uses when Beverly is standing right next to him. It would really mean a lot to the whole family, Brooke. The whole family. Like I was part of it. I should have said no right then. But I didn't. 'Cause even after all these years, some part of me still gets up every time he knocks. Even when I know it's going to hurt. That night I sat on my apartment floor with my laptop and looked up the Wentworths. Cole Wentworth, the groom, civil engineer, University of Tennessee grad, decent enough guy from everything I could find. His father, Douglas Wentworth, 60 years old. He'd started a small construction and site development company 30 years ago and built it from a 2-man crew into one of the bigger operations in the greater Nashville area. Pure hard work. The kind of man who still drives a beat-up Ford pickup to job sites even though he could afford anything on the lot. Tiffany had been with Cole for 2 years. And in that time, she'd been building a whole different version of our family for the Wentworths to believe in. I know because I accidentally found her Instagram, She'd never approved my follow request, but she hadn't bothered making it private. Photo after photo of family Sunday brunch at restaurants I had never once been invited to. Frank in a blazer I'd never seen before. Beverly with fresh highlights. Table candles. Fancy coffee cups. Captions like, "These people are my whole heart and family over everything." I was not in a single frame. Frank manages a plumbing supply warehouse out in Antioch. Tiffany had told the Wentworths he was in commercial supply chain operations. Beverly used to do hair out of their garage on weekends. Tiffany had repackaged that into she had her own beauty studio. Every piece of our real life had been power washed and repainted. I pieced together what she'd told them about me through a conversation I overheard later. She'd warned the Wentworths that I was going through some stuff, and that the family worried about her. That I was sensitive and a little unpredictable. That they should be kind but keep their distance. She had already painted me as a problem that needed managing before I'd walked through a single door. Here's the truth about growing up like I did. When you're invisible at home, you go somewhere else to matter. The firehouse was where I mattered. Station 7 had been my real family for over a decade. My captain, a 26-year veteran named Ray Dominguez, ran that house the way a good parent runs a household. High standards, real follow-through, genuine pride when you got it right. He'd put me in for the Tennessee State Firefighter of the Year award 2 years running. Second year I won. Plaque was at the station. I never brought it home. Never posted about it. The one time I tried to tell Tiffany something I was proud of, I mentioned I'd been nominated for the state award. She tilted her head and gave me that practiced half smile. "That's cute. Is that like a regional thing?" Beverly laughed from the other room. Frank said nothing. So I stopped sharing. I let my work live where it mattered. In the run logs, in the after-action reports, in the way the younger guys on my crew looked at me when we came out of a bad scene and everyone was still on their feet. The biggest call of my career had happened about 2 years earlier. An explosion and partial building collapse at a construction site off Gallatin Pike on a Tuesday morning. 3 workers trapped. I was the rescue team leader on scene. What happened during those 51 minutes inside that building stayed with me in my body the way hard calls do, in my hands, in the back of my throat, in the way I still hold my breath for just a second when I hear the crack of load-bearing wood giving way. But I'll get there. The firehouse, nobody asks what your family thinks of you. They just need your hands to be steady and your head to stay clear when the ceiling starts to come down. The pre-wedding brunch for the families was held at the Wentworth family home. A big stone and timber house out in Brentwood, the kind that looks like it was built to last 3 generations. Wide front porch, big oak trees, a garden out back that clearly had someone professional tending to it. I parked my truck between a Cadillac Escalade and a Lincoln Navigator and sat with both hands on the wheel for 2 full minutes telling myself it was just one afternoon. Inside, it smelled like something fresh from the oven and quiet, confident money. No perfume trying too hard, just good materials and clean space. Catering staff moved through the rooms with trays. Tiffany had positioned herself near the center of the living room like a sun with everyone else in orbit, laughing at something Douglas Wentworth's wife Sandra said, her hand on Cole's arm like she'd been born standing next to him. I slipped down a hallway looking for the bathroom and ended up pausing outside what turned out to be Douglas Wentworth's home office. The door was open. I wasn't snooping. The walls just caught me. Construction project photos, building blueprints, framed thank you letters from the community. And then, right in the center of it all, given more wall space than any business award, a framed photograph and a folded note mounted under glass beside it. A man on a stretcher, oxygen mask on, bandages across his forearm and shoulder. Eyes closed. And a handwritten note, for the woman who brought me home. Next to it, a laminated clipping from the Nashville Tennessean. Headline: Local developer survives Gallatin Pike collapse, rescued after nearly an hour. I looked at the photograph. The man's face was half covered by the oxygen mask. I didn't recognize him. We work fast in those situations, and faces don't always stick the way you'd think they would. I glanced at the article but didn't read more than the first few words before I heard footsteps behind me. "Second birthday," said a voice. I turned. Douglas Wentworth, standing in the doorway of his own office, looking at the framed photo the way people look at something they've thought about every single day. "Beg your pardon?" I said. "That right there." He nodded at the frame. "That's the day I got my life handed back to me. I call it my second birthday." He looked at me for just a half-second longer than felt normal. Something moved behind his eyes. Then Sandra called his name from down the hall and the moment broke. Tiffany appeared at my elbow before I could breathe. "Stop wandering around their house," she hissed, taking my arm. "Come on." The family introductions happened out back on the patio under a covered pergola. Tiffany worked through them like a publicist, polished, smooth, every word loaded and ready. My mom, Beverly, she ran her own beauty studio for years before she stepped back. Beverly beamed. Douglas nodded, impressed. "My dad, Frank, he's been in commercial supply chain for over 2 decades. Frank straightened up and shook Douglas's hand with the energy of a man who desperately wanted to seem like someone else. Then Tiffany turned to the next group of guests. Just rotated her body, like I was a piece of outdoor furniture. Sandra Wentworth, warm eyes, easy smile, the kind of woman who notices things and doesn't pretend she didn't, looked past Tiffany and held out her hand toward me. "And who's this?" Tiffany's smile tightened. "Just barely. Like a seam about to pull." "Oh, that's Brooke. She's around." Sandra held my gaze, curious and real. "What do you do, Brooke?" Before I could open my mouth, Tiffany leaned in. "She works for the city. Like public services." "I'm a firefighter," I said. "Rescue technician. Station 7 here in Nashville, 11 years. Sandra's eyebrows went up. "Oh my goodness, that's incredible. That takes real." Tiffany's hand landed on Sandra's arm like a steering wheel correction. "It does." "Oh, Sandra, I have to show you the venue photos. The florist did something gorgeous with the centerpiece designs. You are going to love it." And just like that, I was standing behind them watching their backs. As they moved inside, I caught one sentence Tiffany whispered to Beverly. "She's already making it a whole thing. Handle her." Beverly found me by the garden 15 minutes later. She moved the way she always did, softly, like a door swinging shut so gently you don't notice until the latch clicks. "Honey," she said, touching my elbow. "Can we chat for just a second?" She walked me to a stone bench at the far end of the yard, well away from the other guests. The kind of corner you put things you want out of sight. "Tiffany is under a lot of pressure right now," Beverly said. Her voice had that layered quality. The top layer was concern, but underneath it was an instruction. "This wedding is the most important thing she's ever done. You understand that. What exactly are you asking me to do, Beverly?" She blinked. "Be supportive. Be present but quiet. Don't make it about yourself." I'd heard this speech in 15 different forms over the years. At Frank's 58th birthday, when Beverly suggested I pop in for the cake and then head out, so the photographer could get clean shots of the immediate family. At Tiffany's college graduation, when I showed up and Frank spent 45 minutes standing next to me without making eye contact. At my own fire academy graduation that none of them came to because it was so far, the ceremony was 22 minutes from their house. I was always the variable to be managed. "I hear you, Beverly," I said. And I did. Every single word. I walked back inside and called my crewmate and best friend Danny from the parking area, leaning against the bed of my truck. Danny had been on my crew for 6 years. She was the only person who knew the full story. "I don't even know why I came," I told her. Then I heard it. Tiffany's voice through a cracked open window above me, sharp and clear. "I told them she has emotional issues. Like instability stuff. They'll back off if I say that. Nobody's going to push it." I went completely still. Instability stuff. Emotional issues. Those words went into me like cold water through a crack in the wall. Not breaking anything. Just getting into places they had no business being. I drove home from the brunch with all 4 windows down, the September air pushing at my face the whole way. It didn't help. Now look, I need you to stay with me here because this story gets so much bigger. But before I go on, can I ask you something? If you've ever had someone in your own family flat out lie about you to make themselves look better, drop a 1 in the comments right now. Just a 1. I want to see how many of you know exactly what this feels like. And if you're not subscribed yet, please hit that button. These stories matter and I want to keep telling them. 2 days later, things got worse. I was at the venue walkthrough for the rehearsal, a quick run-through at the Riverstone Event Center downtown, and I'd stepped outside to the loading dock for some air. Cole was out there talking with one of his groomsmen, a college buddy named Marcus. They didn't see me around the corner of the doorway. Yeah, Cole was saying, easy and casual. Tiffany's stepsister has some personal struggles she's dealing with. Tiffany doesn't really get into it. It's a hard situation. Marcus said something sympathetic about families being complicated. They try to be supportive, Cole continued. Just from a distance, you know? It's one of those things. Supportive from a distance. I stood in the shadow of that loading dock and I saw it all clearly. Tiffany hadn't just been pushing me to the side. She'd been building a reason why I was on the side. She'd handed the Wentworths a ready-made story, the troubled stepsister, the one you handled gently from across the room. Not someone being pushed out. Someone being kept at a safe distance. That night I called my dad. No small talk. Did Tiffany tell the Wentworths I have some kind of mental health problem? Silence. Then that sigh. The one Frank uses when he's been caught and wants to sound tired instead of responsible. She's just protecting the family, Brooke. Don't make a thing out of this. Protecting it from what? From me. You're spinning it. Dad. Did you know about this? Did you go along with it? He didn't answer. Which was the answer? I stared at the phone in my hand and I thought about every Sunday call he'd promised and never made. Every event he'd shown up late to, or not at all, or just long enough to check a box. I thought about the blazer Tiffany had bought him for the brunch, the talking points Beverly had prepped for him, the whole show they'd built around a version of our family that had no room for me in any frame. He hadn't just let Tiffany write me out. He'd handed her the pen. The rehearsal dinner was the following Thursday. The Riverstone Event Center. 160 guests. The kind of event where the napkin rings have a color story and the place cards were done by an actual calligrapher. I counted the chandeliers. There were 7. I got there 20 minutes early because the thought of walking in late felt worse than just waiting. I wore a dark burgundy dress I'd found at a consignment shop near the station, $65, clean lines, simple. And my mom's earrings, small gold drops with a tiny freshwater pearl at the center. She'd worn them almost every single day from the time I was little until the stroke took her when I was 9. They were the only thing of hers I had left. I wore them when I needed to feel like she was close. My name on the seating chart near the entrance was misspelled again. Brookie Table 17. The last table before the service corridor, where the catering staff pushed through with trolleys every few minutes and the air smelled like warming trays and dish soap. My table mates. A +1 nobody seemed to know, a distant co-worker of Beverly's named Harold who spent the first 20 minutes staring at his phone, and 2 empty chairs. Tiffany had placed me as close to invisible as a floor plan allowed. I sat down, smoothed my napkin, looked at the menu. Chilean sea bass. Beef tenderloin. Dessert trio. Each plate probably cost more than I bring home in a full shift. Tiffany took the stage about 25 minutes in. She looked genuinely stunning. I'll say that honestly and without any bitterness because it's the truth. She had the room from the second she picked up the microphone. And then she did what she does best. She started introducing people. Beverly first. My mom, the woman who taught me that grace isn't something you're born with, It's something you build every single day. Beverly pressed both hands over her heart. The room clapped like they'd been waiting to. Frank next. My dad, the man who showed me what it means to show up for the people you love. Frank's eyes went glassy. He raised his glass. The room followed. Her bridesmaids. Her maid of honor. Cole's family. The Wentworths. The people I feel like I've been walking toward my whole life without knowing it. She thanked the florist. The venue coordinator. The band by name. Cole's college friend Marcus, who had driven in from Atlanta. Then she turned toward table 17. She paused. Pause was on purpose. I know Tiffany's silences. She never leaves them by accident. And this is my stepsister Brooke. Her head tilted. A small, practiced smile played at the corner of her mouth. She's just a firefighter. Just. Frank laughed first. Clear, full, genuine. Beverly's mouth curved in that one-sided way she has, like satisfaction wearing a thin coat of warmth. A few guests laughed along. Not out of cruelty. Just reflex. When the bride sets the tone, the room follows. 160 people looked at me for 4 seconds. Then conversation picked back up and I became part of the wallpaper. I pressed my fingers into my palms under the table until I felt the marks forming. I did not stand up. I did not cry. I did not leave. But I noticed something at the head table. One person was not laughing. Douglas Wentworth. His glass was sitting untouched. He was looking at me from across the room with a stillness that didn't match anything around him. He leaned toward Sandra and said something I couldn't hear. Then he turned to Cole. And I watched his lips move around what looked like, I know her from somewhere. I didn't know what that meant yet. But something about the way his eyes stayed on me after he said it made the back of my neck go warm. Hey, before Tiffany's big toast comes, this is the part where I always ask, if this story is getting to you, hit that like button right now. Seriously helps more people find these videos. And real quick, drop your city name and your local time in the comments. I love building that map of where all of you are listening from. Okay, back to the dinner. Tiffany's toast came about 40 minutes later. She stood at the center of the dance floor and talked about family, about love, about the people who shape you. She was good at it. The room was completely in her hand. From Tiffany's side of the guest list, a woman approached my table, mid-50s, big earrings, the kind of laugh that always sounds like it's aimed at something. She sat down without asking, looked me over. So you're the stepsister. Tiffany mentioned you. She smiled. A firefighter, huh? So you drive the truck? I looked at her evenly. I'm a rescue technician. 2 years ago I led the team at the Gallatin Pike building collapse. 3 workers were trapped underground. We got all 3 of them out. The smile rearranged itself. She cleared her throat, said something about needing to find her husband, and was gone inside 90 seconds. Tiffany appeared at my elbow almost immediately. Please do not tell those stories to people. Nobody wants to hear them at a party. I said nothing. Because the silence after the words we got all 3 out had already done everything I needed. But across the room I noticed something. Cole was standing near the bar watching his fiancée with an expression I'd never seen on him before. A slight furrow between his brows. The beginning of a question he hadn't fully put together yet. Tiffany cornered me in the restroom about an hour later. Marble countertops. Linen hand towels folded into shapes. She closed the door behind her and the click of that latch was extremely final. Listen to me. Her voice was flat and bare, the performance was gone, stripped all the way down. Tomorrow is my wedding. Mine. You will sit where I put you. You will not talk to the Wentworths. You will not bring up your job. You will smile when you need to smile and you will be quiet the rest of the time. That's it. That's all I need. I met her eyes in the mirror. Why did you tell them I'm unstable, Tiffany? She didn't flinch. She didn't blink. Because I told them what made the most sense to tell them. You lied about me. I managed the situation. You think the Wentworths wouldn't accept us the way we actually are? Frank running a warehouse and you marrying into their family? I am building a life, Brooke. She said my name like she just remembered she had to. This wedding is the most important thing that has ever happened to me. I am not going to let you walk in here with your work boots and your rescue stories and blow up the picture I have spent 2 years carefully building. You do not get to do that. You're asking me to pretend I'm not a person. I'm asking you to know your place. Know your place. 3 words. They weren't new. I've been hearing them my whole life in different packaging. In the way Frank called Beverly's daughter our girl and called me Frank's kid. In every event I wasn't invited to. In every photo I was cropped out of. In every Sunday call that never came back. Tiffany was just the first person to actually say them out loud to my face. The door opened. Beverly. Smooth expression, bright eyes, ready to jump in. Everything okay in here? Just catching up, Tiffany said lightly. She fixed a strand of hair, straightened her dress, walked out. Beverly gave me a look that was half smile, half warning, then followed her daughter out and let the door fall shut behind her like a period at the end of a sentence that had already been written. I stood in that marble bathroom for a solid 2 minutes. Just breathed. Looked at my mom's earrings in the mirror. And I made a decision. I didn't know exactly what it would look like. I just knew that tomorrow, for the first time in my life, I was not going to make myself small on command. I left the rehearsal dinner early. Nobody noticed. I sat in my truck in the parking garage with the engine off, both hands on the wheel, looking at the little carabiner clip on my keychain that the crew had given me after my 5th year at the station. It had a tiny flame on it. Caught the fluorescent light from the ceiling and threw a small gold reflection onto the steering column. I could just go home. I could skip the whole thing. I could let Tiffany have her perfect day and go back to the station where people needed me and my name was spelled right on every run report I'd ever filed. Called Danny. She picked up on the first ring. They called you just a firefighter, she said after I gave her the short version. No lead up. Danny never wasted words. Brooke, you've walked into buildings that were actively falling down and you brought people home. Don't you dare let anyone make you feel like that means nothing. I looked through the parking garage toward the lit windows of the ballroom. Inside, the party was going strong without a single ripple to mark the spot where I'd been. Then I saw Douglas Wentworth. He was standing alone at the far end of the lobby bar, a glass in his hand, staring out through the window. Not at anything specific. Just out. And for just a moment, through the glass and the dark of the parking structure and everything between us, we seemed to be looking in the same direction. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Text. This is Sandra Wentworth. I got your number from the event coordinator's contact sheet. I hope that's okay. I just wanted to say I'm glad you'll be there tomorrow. Douglas has been asking about you all evening, and I think it matters that you're there. Please come. I read it 3 times. I didn't understand it. Not yet. I wouldn't until the next evening. But those words, Douglas has been asking about you, told me something. Say, don't drive away. Don't let tonight be the night you disappear from your own life for good. I started the engine. I drove home. Toward tomorrow. Not away from it. Now listen, I know some of you are on the edge of your seats right now and some of you are going to want to come back for what happens next. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it when I post. And share this video with one person, just one, who needs to hear a story about someone who stayed when everything said leave. Okay. The wedding. The wedding was held at the Wentworth family property. They owned a restored barn event space out in Franklin that Sandra had turned into a gorgeous venue over several years. Exposed wood beams, string lights, white draping. About 190 guests. flowers that looked like they'd been pulled straight out of a garden. Tiffany wore a gown that made the afternoon light look like it was showing off. The whole thing was genuinely beautiful. I arrived early because I didn't trust myself to show up at all if I gave myself more time to think about it. Tiffany caught me near the entrance. "You're early. Stay out of all photos until I specifically come get you." She looked me up and down. Moved on. She got me exactly once for the family group shot. The photographer put me at the far right edge, half behind Frank's shoulder. Later, when the photos went up, my face was cropped out of every single one Tiffany posted. The reception, I found my seat. Table 20. Near the back. Near the service door. 3 empty chairs. The centerpiece at my table had fewer flowers than every other table in the room. I'm not imagining it, I counted the stems. I'd been placed as close to non-existent as the room layout would allow. Then Douglas Wentworth came around. He was going table to table the way hosts do, shaking hands, thanking people for coming, making everyone feel personally seen. When he got to table 20, he didn't do the quick handshake and move. He pulled out a chair and sat down. He turned his glass slowly on the white tablecloth. "You know," he said, 2 years ago I was on a construction site on Gallatin Pike when a section of the second-floor frame gave way. Part of the building came down. 3 of my workers got buried. I was partly trapped myself." He paused. For 51 minutes, before the heavy rescue equipment could get to our section of the site, one person ran the whole rescue operation. She got all 3 of my guys out. She came back in for me. He looked up at me. The paramedic who checked me out on scene told me that if that rescue tech hadn't known exactly what she was doing, the second collapse that hit 20 minutes later would have killed me. Something very quiet was happening inside my chest. I've thought about that woman every single day since, but I never tracked her down. I don't know why exactly. Maybe I thought about it so much that she started to feel like she was already somewhere safe in my mind and I didn't want to mess with that. He looked at me carefully, like he was trying to place something. "I'm sorry," he said. "You remind me of someone." Very strongly. Someone called his name from across the tent. He stood, squeezed my shoulder once, firmly the way people who've been through something real touch other people, and walked away. Tiffany's reception speech was her best work all night. She stood at the center of the dance floor in that beautiful gown and worked the room for a solid 12 minutes. She thanked Cole. She thanked the Wentworths. She thanked Beverly with a speech that made half the room cry. She thanked Frank, the man who always made me feel like the most important person in the room. She did not say my name. Not once. Not even a passing mention. Not even a glance toward table 20. 190 people applauded. Beverly nodded with the quiet satisfaction of someone watching a long-running plan land perfectly. Frank raised his glass. Nobody noticed the gap. Because you can only notice someone's missing if you knew they were supposed to be there. Cole noticed. He leaned in quietly after the clapping settled. "You didn't mention Brooke." Tiffany touched his face. "She prefers it that way. She gets overwhelmed by attention. Trust me." I went to the restroom, locked the stall, stood at the mirror. My mom's earrings, my dry eyes, my completely still face. Mom would have said my name first. The door opened. Sandra Wentworth came in. She saw me. She didn't pretend she hadn't. "I noticed," she said quietly. "Are you okay?" "I'm used to it." Sandra held my gaze for a long moment. "Nobody should be used to that, Brooke." I found my dad on the side patio, leaning on the railing with a glass of bourbon like it owed him something. "She didn't say my name," I said. In front of almost 200 people. Frank exhaled through his nose. "Don't do this tonight. This is Tiffany's night." "When is it my night, Dad?" I'm asking genuinely. "When?" "You're being dramatic." This is exactly what Tiffany, he stopped. What? What does Tiffany say about me? He looked away. Down at the string lights in the garden. At the catering staff moving between tables. At literally everything that wasn't my face. That look. I've been watching him give that look my whole life. The step back. The pull away into some private distance where he didn't have to be responsible for anything. The daughter he'd stopped being a real father to somewhere around the time he married Beverly. I'm done, Dad. He flinched. Not done with tonight. Done waiting for you to see me. Done making the Sunday calls you never return. Done showing up to things so you can pretend you have 2 daughters when really you only ever made room for one. Can I fix this? I don't know. But you can't fix it by getting emotional at a wedding and going back to normal on Monday when Tiffany calls and asks you to pretend I don't exist again. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. She told me you were happier when we gave you space. That you didn't really want to be included. And I wanted to believe that because it was easier than facing the truth. There it was. 23 years. One sentence. He hadn't been fooled. He'd chosen to go along. I don't need your tears, Dad. I need you to remember exactly how this feels the next time she asks you to leave me out of something. That's it. That's all I'm asking. I walked back inside. And I stopped. Douglas Wentworth was at the bar alone. His phone was in his hand, screen lit. From across the room I could see he was reading something. An article. Old with that yellowish quality of something saved a long time. He was reading it with the full focus of a man who is right on the edge of finally placing something he's been trying to place for 2 years. He looked up. Looked at me. Set his phone face down on the bar. Started walking toward me. He stopped 2 feet away. His jaw was set. His voice was steady and careful, the way you speak when you're holding something you don't want to drop. I have to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. Okay. Where were you working 2 years ago? The Gallatin Pike collapse. Tubber. A Tuesday. And there it was. The date. The address. Call that had lived in my hands and my sleep and my breathing for 2 years. The one I still went back over sometimes during the slow hours at the station, what I saw when I got into that building, what I heard, what I smelled, where I put my hands. Station 7, I said. I was the rescue tech team lead on that call. Something in his face opened up. Not in a big dramatic way. It was quiet. The way something you've been holding tight for a long time finally lets go. It's you, he said. Almost to himself. Then again, looking straight at me. It's you. He told me what he remembered. The voice talking to him while he was pinned. The hands that knew exactly where to press and where not to. He told me he'd been drifting in and out, and what kept pulling him back was a woman's voice describing something small and ordinary, and what I had described, I could remember it now, was my mom's earrings. I always wore them on shift because I'd made a private deal with myself that she got to come to work with me. And when Douglas had started going pale and quiet and his eyes were losing focus, I talked to him about the gold drops with the little pearl centers, told him about my mom, told him to stay with me, stay right here, look at me, the earrings are right here, stay. His gaze dropped to my ears. His jaw tightened. Those earrings, he said. I remember those earrings. Then Tiffany's voice came through the speakers. Time for the father-son dance, everybody. And Douglas had to go. But before he turned, he took both my hands in both of his. Do not leave. I have something to say tonight, and you need to be in this room when I say it. He'd been thinking about that rescue tech for 2 years. And she'd been right here at his son's wedding, sitting at table 20 behind a fake story someone had built to keep her invisible. I stood at the edge of the tent and watched Douglas disappear through a side door. He was gone for 16 minutes. I counted every single one. I found out later from Douglas himself what he did in those 16 minutes. He walked to the far side of the parking area and called Nashville Fire Station 7. The overnight crew answered. He asked for the duty officer and got Captain Ray Dominguez, who happened to be running a late shift. Douglas explained who he was. Asked Ray to confirm the rescue team leader at the Gallatin Pike collapse October 2 years ago. Ray's answer was immediate. Brooke Merritt. She led that rescue. Got all 3 workers out, then went back in for you before the secondary collapse warning went off. She received a formal award from the department and the state fire marshal's office. Mr. Wentworth, I've been doing this for 26 years. Brooke is one of the best rescue technicians I have ever worked with in my life. She saved your life. Can you send me that award paperwork? Right now. 3 minutes later, Douglas's phone buzzed. The email came through from the Nashville Fire Department's main office. The formal award letter, signed by the fire chief and the state fire marshal. Clinical, clear language. Brooke A. Merritt, Rescue Tech 2, showed outstanding leadership under active building collapse conditions, leading the rescue of 3 trapped victims and then going back in to stabilize a 4th person in worsening conditions while a second collapse could have happened at any moment. Douglas read it twice. Then he called Sandra. Get me the microphone after the last toast. I need to say something. Sandra paused. What kind of something, Douglas? The kind that's been waiting 2 years to be said. I went back to table 20. The dance floor was full. Tiffany was spinning with coal, glowing, every moment perfectly lit, every angle working for her. Beverly was photographing everything with her phone. Frank was watching his stepdaughter with the look of a man watching something he invested in pay off. I sat alone at the worst table in the room with 3 empty chairs and a half-wilted centerpiece and my own reflection in the back of a dinner spoon. Then Sandra Wentworth sat down beside me. She didn't make a big thing of it. Didn't walk over with any announcement. She just pulled out the chair next to mine, set her evening bag on the tablecloth, folded her hands and settled in like she'd picked that seat on purpose a long time ago. She had on a simple navy wrap dress and jewelry that was real but quiet, the kind of quiet that belongs to a woman who has absolutely nothing left to prove. We sat without talking for a moment. The band moved into something slow. He told me, she said, about what you did. I looked at her. He remembers more than I expected. He remembers all of it. She unfolded her hands and folded them again. He talks about the rescue tech from that call on every single anniversary of the accident. Every year without missing one. He puts fresh flowers on the table and talks about the person who brought him home. She paused. You never went looking for any credit. You never came forward. That's not why I do the job. I know, Sandra said. That's exactly why you deserve it. The band played. We sat. What's he going to do? I asked. Sandra looked at me with an expression I hadn't had pointed at me in a very long time. It was protective. The real kind, not performance, just someone genuinely having your back. What he should have done the minute he figured out who you were. She reached over and put her hand on top of mine on the tablecloth. And I let her. 'Cause for the first time all night, somebody was sitting with me who actually wanted to be there. I want you to sit with that for a second. Sandra Wentworth, a woman who could have been anywhere in that room at the head table on the dance floor surrounded by all her people, chose to pull up a chair at table 20. And right then I understood something I'd been trying to say to myself for years. How much people think of you has nothing to do with where they put you. It's about who chooses to come sit with you anyway. The MC stepped up to the center of the dance floor. Adjusted his mic, smiled at the room. Ladies and gentlemen, the father of the groom would like to say a few words. Applause. 190 chairs shifted. Douglas Wentworth stepped into the spotlight. He looked like a man who had been walking toward this exact moment for 2 years without knowing it. Tiffany, near the cake table, was beaming. She touched Cole's arm and leaned in slightly. This was the part of the evening she'd planned out. The Wentworth patriarch welcoming his new daughter-in-law into the family. The seal on the picture she'd spent 2 years building. Douglas took the microphone and did not smile. Most of you know, he began, his voice moving through the tent with the easy weight of someone who has spent a lifetime meaning what he says, that 2 years ago I was in a serious accident. A structural failure at one of my own construction sites on Gallatin Pike. Part of the second floor came down. 3 of my workers were trapped. So was I. He paused. Every conversation in the room stopped. For 51 minutes before the heavy rescue equipment could get to our part of the site, one person ran the whole operation. She came in without full backup. She read the structure in active collapse. She got my guys out one by one. His voice dropped just slightly. Then she came back in for me. The paramedic on scene told me afterward that if she had made a different call, if she'd waited, if she'd pulled back when the second collapse warning went out, I would not be standing in this tent tonight. He looked at the room. Tiffany's smile had gone stiff. She was trying to figure out where this was going. She didn't have a script for where this was going. I never found her, Douglas said. The fire department couldn't release her name. Privacy rules. I searched on my own. For 2 years I've been carrying around a copy of the incident report with nothing but a last name and a station number, trying to close something that's been wide open since October 2 years ago. He took a long breath. Tonight she found me. The room did not breathe. Douglas turned and looked straight at table 20. The woman who saved my life, he said, is sitting right here. This table. In the back of this room. He held the moment for 1 full second. Her name is Brooke Merritt. 190 heads turned. 190 pairs of eyes landed on the woman at table 20. The one in the burgundy dress from the consignment shop. The one with the half-wilted centerpiece and the 3 empty chairs. Complete silence. Kind where you can hear the candles breathing. Douglas's voice didn't shake. About an hour ago, the woman standing at this microphone introduced Brooke as just a firefighter. He turned slowly and looked directly at Tiffany. Tiffany's face had gone the same color as the white draping behind her. Let me tell you what just a firefighter actually means. He held up his phone. Green facing the room. The award letter. The Nashville Fire Department seal. This is from the Nashville Fire Department and the State Fire Marshal's office. A formal award letter signed by the fire chief and the fire marshal. It says Brooke Merritt showed outstanding leadership in active collapse conditions. It says she coordinated the rescue of 3 people and then went back into a building that was falling apart to hold a 4th person stable before a second collapse hit. His voice went lower and rock solid. It says she did all of that because she knew exactly what she was doing and she was not leaving until everyone was out. Someone started clapping. In the middle of the room. Then someone near the back. Then it rolled forward like a wave, unstoppable, and suddenly almost every person in that tent was on their feet. This is the moment I literally cannot get through without tearing up every single time. If you're feeling this right now, please share this video. Send it to someone who needs to hear this today. Someone who's been told their work is just something. Okay. Keep going. Tiffany stood frozen where she'd been. Frank had set his glass down. He was looking at me with an expression I had never, in 32 years of life, seen on his face. Something between shock and grief, like he was looking at someone he'd always known was there and had spent 2 decades choosing not to look at. Cole turned to Tiffany. His voice was quiet, but in the stillness of that room it carried. You told me she had emotional problems. You told my family she was unstable. He wasn't yelling. He was flat and direct. That's not true, is it? It wasn't a question. Tiffany's hands went to her necklace. A nervous flutter I knew from childhood. The tell. The one that showed up right before a lie ran out of road. Cole, this is not the... Is it true? Tent was a courtroom. 190 witnesses. Tiffany tried to put the smile back together. It didn't hold. I was just trying to keep things manageable. Sandra Wentworth stood up from table 20. Her voice was calm, clear, and absolutely crushing in its steadiness. Manageable. She looked at her new daughter-in-law. You told our family that the woman who saved my husband's life was emotionally unstable. You made up a mental health condition so you could keep her hidden at the back of the room on the most important night of her life. A pause. That is not managing. That is a lie. And it is a lie about someone who risked her life for the person I love most in the world. Frank stepped forward. Let's not blow this whole thing out of. Douglas cut him off without raising his voice. Frank, your daughter told a flat-out lie about your other daughter's mental health in order to fool my family. That's not a size issue. That's a character issue. Tiffany's eyes went wet. Fast tears. The kind that show up on demand. Beverly moved toward her. Reached out. Tiffany pushed her mother's hand away. And then, with the mic still live somewhere nearby and every eye in the room on her, something raw and unscripted came through. She pointed at me. This is her fault. She was supposed to stay in the background. That was the whole deal. She should have stayed invisible. That's all I asked. The sound that moved through the room was soft. Collective. Like wind hitting something all at once. She should have stayed invisible. Nobody coached her to say that. Nobody scripted it. It was the first fully honest thing Tiffany had said since she'd picked up the microphone. And that made it the most damaging thing she said all night. Douglas stepped back to the microphone. The room was still vibrating with what Tiffany had just said. He stood in the middle of it like a man who had come through worse. I didn't come up here tonight with a plan, he said. His voice had gotten rough at the edges, the way voices get when something held down for a long time is finally allowed up. But I've been carrying something for 2 years that belongs to someone in this room. And I think tonight is exactly the right time to give it. He looked at the crowd. 2 years ago, in the weeks after the accident, I set up the Wentworth Foundation Emergency Services Fellowship. $180,000 a year for firefighters and rescue technicians who show exceptional dedication in the field. I've spent 2 years looking for the right person to receive the very first one. He shook his head slowly, with something between wonder and grief crossing his face. She's been at table 20 this whole time. He stepped down from the stage. The spotlight moved with him, the same light that had been following Tiffany all night now tracking a 60-year-old man walking steadily toward the back of the room. He stopped at my table, extended his hand. Brooke Merritt, on behalf of the Wentworth Foundation, I want to officially offer you the very first fellowship. It will fund your advanced technical rescue certification, your continuing education, and any training program you want to go after. You name it. I stood up. My legs weren't entirely steady, but my eyes were clear. I took his hand. The room stood with me. 190 people. On their feet. The sound of it filled every inch of that barn, all the way up into the beams and out through the string lights. Douglas leaned in close, just to me, just a few words under all that noise. Thank you for bringing me home. Behind us, Tiffany stood alone under the lights that had stopped following her. Her wedding, her venue, her guests, and the only story anyone in that room would walk away carrying was the one she had spent 2 years trying to bury. Cole took Tiffany by the arm, not rough, not loud, but firm, and walked her through the side door to the outdoor terrace. Through the glass wall, the guests could see them. Tiffany's arms crossed over her chest. Cole's hands going into his pockets, back out, through his hair. The body language of a man pulling up the floorboards of everything he thought he was building. Pieces of the conversation came through the cracked door. You told my parents she was unstable. You had me feeling sorry for my own wife's stepsister. What else have you told me that isn't true? Everything I did was for us, Cole. For what we're building. What we're building. My dad almost died. The person who saved him was sitting in the back of our wedding because you put her there. She's not. She is. She absolutely is. She is the reason my dad walked me down the aisle today. Silence. Then Cole, quieter but final. Here's what's going to happen. You are going to apologize to Brooke tonight, in front of the people who watched you do what you did. And next week, we are starting couples counseling. Not optional. And Tiffany, if I find out there are other things you've told me that aren't true, we are going to be having a completely different conversation than this one. Through the glass, I watched the confidence in Tiffany's posture soften in a way I had never once seen. That particular way she'd carried herself since she was 12, like she was always the center, went quiet. Completely. She'd built an entire world on performance. And for the first time, the performance had nowhere left to go. My dad found me. I hadn't gone looking for him. He came to the far side of the venue where I'd stepped out for air, past the end of the tent, near the old oak trees where the string lights didn't reach. Brooke. I turned. Frank. His borrowed blazer wrinkled. His face torn up in a way I hadn't seen before. Not the careful, managed sadness he usually kept polished, but something real. The face of a man who just saw clearly what his choices added up to and doesn't know how to pick that up. I didn't know, he said. About the accident. About Douglas. No. You didn't. 'Cause you never asked. About the accident or anything else. You've never once asked what happens at work. You've never called because you actually wanted to know how I was. You've never shown up to a single thing unless Tiffany needed me there for a photo. I thought I was keeping the peace. You were keeping Tiffany comfortable. Those aren't the same thing, and I think part of you has always known that. He tried to find words. They dissolved before they got out. Then he cried. My 59-year-old father in a borrowed jacket at somebody else's wedding on somebody else's property, crying with the full weight of 23 years of choices landing somewhere he couldn't sidestep them. I didn't go to him. I stayed where I was. I don't hate you, I said. I stopped having the energy for that a long time ago. But I don't have any room left for being invisible. Not for you, not for Tiffany, not for anyone. And if you want something different between us, if you actually want that, it has to start on a plain old Tuesday when nothing's on the line. Not tonight. Not while you're emotional and Douglas Wentworth is 20 feet away. On a Tuesday. He nodded. I walked back inside. Tiffany came back to the reception 20 minutes later. Her makeup had been fixed, but her eyes were red underneath, and her posture had the stiffness of someone who has just been handed terms. Cole walked next to her, present but not touching her. She took the microphone for the third time that night. The room already knew. The silence that met her was a completely different kind from the silence she'd controlled all evening. This one had weight and direction. I owe someone an apology. Her voice was the smallest I'd ever heard it. She scanned the room without finding any way out. Brooke, I introduced you the way I did and that was wrong. I'm sorry. She stopped. Breathed. And I told the Wentworth family things about you that weren't true. I told them you had emotional problems. That wasn't true. I made it up. I'm sorry for that. The apology landed in that beautiful barn like something heavy dropped on a hardwood floor. Small. Solid. Going into every corner. It wasn't enough. Every single person in that room knew it wasn't enough. But it was what one night could pull out. I didn't walk to the stage. I didn't hug her. I didn't say, I forgive you, because forgiveness is not something you do on someone else's schedule. It's a decision. Takes time. It might take a long time. I met her eyes across the room. I nodded once. That was all I had for her that night. And it was more than she'd given me in 23 years. Cole leaned into the mic after her. Brooke, my family owes you a great deal more than an apology. And we intend to show it. The reception kept going. Weddings have their own energy even when the ground shifts under them. The band played. Cake was cut. People danced. But the room had changed in some basic way, not ruined, not sour, just honest. People talked a little more quietly. Laughter came in smaller amounts. The truth of what had happened was still in the air, and it changed the temperature of everything. Douglas found me in the garden as the night was winding down. He sat on a wooden bench near the edge of the property without any lead-up and reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. "I want to show you something." From his wallet, brown leather, old, worn, soft at every crease, he pulled a small folded paper. He unfolded it slowly, the way you handle something you've been carrying so long it's become part of your body. It was a printout of an incident report, worn at the folds until the paper had gone soft. The ink faded in the creases. The top in plain typeface, Lead Rescue Technician B. Merritt, Station 7. "I have carried your name in my wallet every single day for 2 years, he said. "I didn't know your face. I didn't know your voice outside of that building. But I knew that name. And I knew I was alive because of whoever it belonged to." I looked at that paper. Soft and faded. He hadn't just saved it. He'd lived with it every day. "When she said just a firefighter tonight," he continued, "I wanted to stand up right then. But I needed to be sure first. I needed to know before I said anything in front of all those people." He looked at me. "Because nobody, not anyone, gets to turn the person who saved my life into a punchline. Not in a room I'm sitting in." He handed me a business card. The Wentworth Foundation. A name. A direct number. "This is real. The fellowship is real. Call Monday morning." He paused. "And Brooke, whatever you need to keep doing what you do, you call that number." I took the card. I held the soft, faded paper with my name on it, and I let 2 years of silence mean something. A week later, the Wentworth Foundation's program director called at 9 on Monday morning. Her name was Elise. She walked me through the whole fellowship over about 45 minutes. $180,000. Advanced Technical Rescue Certification through the National Fire Academy. Conference travel. Continuing education stipend. My name, spelled correctly first and last, listed as the very first recipient on the Foundation's website and annual report. I signed the paperwork at my kitchen table in my station uniform before a 48-hour shift. Tiffany and Cole started couples counseling that same week. I heard through Frank, who had apparently figured out that phones work for outgoing calls too, that the Wentworths had quietly changed the financial support they'd been planning to give the couple for a house down payment. Nothing mean-spirited. Just conditional. 6 months of real, sustained counseling first. Tiffany's social world got a lot smaller. People in the Wentworths' actual circle, the ones whose respect she'd spent 2 years working hard to get, stopped calling back the way they had been. Her wedding content on Instagram went from hundreds of comments to dozens, then less. Comment section that had been full of heart emojis went quiet the way a room goes quiet when the temperature suddenly changes. Frank wrote me a letter. Not a text. Not a voicemail. An actual letter, on lined notebook paper, in handwriting I had to study for a second because I'd never seen more than a signature from him before. He wrote about my Fire Academy graduation. About the first call I'd ever told him about back when I still tried to share things with him and how he'd changed the subject. About 23 years of picking the easy path instead of the right one. He wrote that he was sorry. I read it. Folded it in thirds. Put it in my nightstand drawer. I didn't write back right away. Not because I wanted to punish him. 'Cause some apologies need to sit in the dark for a while before you know whether they're real seeds or just words that look like seeds. Beverly didn't call. Didn't text. That was Beverly. When a situation stopped offering something useful to her, she simply stopped being present. Consistent right to the end. The Monday after the wedding, I walked back into Station 7 and the firehouse didn't care about any of it. A warehouse roof failure in Germantown. A multi-car crash on I-65 with people trapped. An elderly man whose oxygen system failed at home and whose neighbor called it in just in time. Ray Dominguez caught me in the apparatus bay between calls. Leaned against the engine with his arms crossed. Douglas Wentworth called the station again this morning, he said. Wanted to personally thank the whole crew. He talked about you for about 10 minutes. Ray paused. He said you were a hero. I'm a firefighter, I said. Ray smiled. The real one. The one he saved for moments he actually meant. Yeah. That pretty much covers it. I didn't tell the full story to the crew. I didn't post about it. Same way I'd never posted about the state award or the formal recognition or any of the hundreds of calls that made me who I am. The work lives where it belongs, in the run reports, in the after-action reviews, in the people who went home to their families because we did our jobs right. But something in me had changed. Not on the outside. Inside. I stood at my locker before my next shift and touched my mom's earrings in the mirror. They had always been about loss. About the 9-year-old sitting at a kitchen table trying to understand how a person you love can just be gone. But standing there in the fluorescent light, they felt like something different. A thread. Running through every single version of me that had ever existed. The 9-year-old who lost her mom. The teenager who stopped existing in her dad's new household. The 21-year-old who walked into a fire academy because she needed somewhere to matter. The woman who crawled into a collapsing building on a Tuesday morning because 3 people needed someone who knew exactly what to do. The 32-year-old who sat at table 20 and refused to disappear. I didn't plan any of what happened. I didn't set it up. I didn't wait for the right moment or put myself in position for recognition. I just kept doing the work. And eventually, the truth found its own way home. The real win wasn't what Douglas said from that stage. The real thing, the one that goes deeper than any single night, was 23 years of becoming someone that no dismissal, no matter how public or well-planned, could actually shrink. 'Cause that kind of person doesn't get built in spotlight moments. Gets built in the 51 minutes inside a falling building when nobody's watching and nobody's clapping, and the only thing that matters is whether you know what to do next. 2 weeks after the wedding, a card arrived in my mailbox. Thick cream-colored stationery. Douglas Wentworth's handwriting. Brooke, Sandra and I host Thanksgiving every year. About 18 people. This year there is a chair at our table with your name on it. Spelled correctly. We would very much like you to come. Douglas. It was the first time in longer than I can clearly remember that someone invited me to a table where I wasn't an afterthought. I put it on my refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a fire helmet that one of the kids from a school visit gave me last spring. Sits next to my work schedule and a photograph of my mom, the one where she's laughing at something just off frame, head thrown back, gold earrings catching the light. Both of them catching the light. I don't know what happens next with my dad. I don't know whether Tiffany will genuinely become a different person, or whether she'll just get more careful about which parts of herself she shows in front of the wrong people. I don't know whether Beverly will ever reach out for any reason other than her own gain. But here's what I know. I'm not waiting for any of them anymore. This morning I clipped my badge to my jacket. Merritt B Station 7. Put in my mom's earrings. Drove my truck to the station. Walked in, and the lieutenant handed me 3 pages of pre-shift notes before I'd gotten my coffee poured. My mom used to say, do right by people and the right people will find their way to you. Took 32 years. But she was right. My name is Brooke Merritt. I'm just a firefighter. And that is the most powerful thing I have ever been. This story hit something real for you. If you've ever had someone attach the word just to everything you've worked for, if someone in your own family has told you to stay invisible, I want you to hear this loud and clear. You are not your family's version of you. You are not the worst table at the party. You are what you do in the moments when nobody's watching and nobody's keeping score. Now here's my question for you, and I read every single comment. Do you think Tiffany actually changes for real? Or do people like her just get better at hiding it? Drop your answer below, change or hide. I genuinely want to know what you think. And one more thing before you go, if this story meant something to you today, please share it. Send it to one person who needs to hear it. Post it somewhere. Let it find the person it's supposed to find. That's how these stories travel. Hit that like button if you felt this. Hit subscribe if you want more. And drop your city name and your local time in the comments right now. I am building a map of everywhere these stories are landing and I want you on it. Take care of yourselves out there. And always remember, you are so much more than what they call you.